Hello, I'm Anuradha SenGupta. On the Media Dialogues today, the Unstereotype Alliance, the industry-led initiative that I think will strike a big blow for gender equality and women's empowerment, something that will change the fundamentals of advertising. Convened by the United Nations, the India chapter launched in March. Like everything else, its momentum has been impacted a bit by the catastrophic second wave of COVID-19 we've all experienced, but all the key stakeholders have been at it, and this month we'll get a clear sense of what to expect next. I'm joined now by the people who know exactly what's going on. Please welcome Susan Ferguson. She's the India representative for UN Women. Anupriya Acharya of the Publici Group. She also heads the Advertising Agencies Association of India. Subhash Kamath, he's the CEO of BBH and Publici Worldwide, also chairman of the Advertising Standards Council of India. And Priya Nair, the executive director at Hindustan Unilever, which is also vice chair of the Unstereotype Alliance. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. I hope you've been well.
Yes, thank you.
All good. Thank you.
I'm going to start with you, Susan, because this is such a powerful idea. How did you all go about getting on board marketers and advertisers, not just as allies, but as stakeholders in something that is going to fundamentally change how advertising is seen and done?
Thank you very much, Anuradha. Well, it's been really a major effort from both our headquarters at the very highest level. So our executive director really has driven this alliance globally. But she didn't do it alone. You know, there were many advertising agencies who immediately saw and had been talking to her anyway about linking up together to try and as you said, strike a blow for gender equality. So the alliance was launched in 2017 globally. And since then, there's been, actually hundreds of different firms who've joined in, recognising that this is not only the right thing to do to change gender norms so that there is more equality between women and men, but it also makes sense financially because many consumers are women, of course, and they want to see themselves reflected in a diversity of roles, just as we are in real life.
Right. Let me get Priya in here. Priya, the past year and this year in March, such big announcements coming out of Hindustan Unilever. How many of these actions that we are now hearing about and we are seeing in action linked to these kind of commitments that you have to the Unstereotype Alliance?
So thanks, Anuradha. I think, over a period of time with HUL, we've demonstrated, Anuradha, that purpose really drives brand equity and that in turn drives growth. So our purpose-led brands and, unstereotyped brands are growing nearly 2x of their peers. So I hope that, there's no need for any business case to do some of these things. I think Susan referenced it, but, consumers and women want to see themselves portrayed in a manner that they see themselves. I mean, as funny, as intelligent, as, with having diverse roles, jobs. So, there absolutely is the business case for it. And if anything in this pandemic, Anuradha, I think the inequalities have actually deepened and widened and, the vulnerable and women are the hardest hit. So it absolutely is the right direction for us to, as industry, go around.
Right. Anupriya, Priya said there is no real need to make a business case, but is that what you're hearing from Indian marketers and businesses who need to be onboarded, members perhaps of the AAAs of I that you head?
Definitely so. I think at an overall level, both globally and locally, there have been, we are at a pivotal time, I would say. And there are enough and more social and cultural movements, both in India and globally, where there are questions being thrown up, discussions happening on gender, on individuality. And from that angle, I think that the Indian corporations also are very, very ready for it. There is enough and more sort of awareness and discussions around diversity and equality, inclusion across all these areas. In fact, like Priya said, diversity actually is now a business imperative, both from a consumer angle, because the consumer is more aware. They are more aware of the company's value systems. They take position on large social issues. They want their brands to take positions. They want their brands to be more progressive. And at a organization level, at the company level, CXOs have KPIs that are linked to diversity and inclusion targets. So I think from that angle, the overall environment, I think, has been moving into this direction for some time. And I think obviously the launch of the UA India chapter is very timely. We can progress further faster with organizations like UA making all these conversations even more mainstream from what they are.
Right. Let me get Subhash in here. Subhash, we've come a long way from the advertising where, to put it in like a shorthand, that you buy the car, you get the woman for free. We've come a long way from that kind of advertising imagery, isn't it? And as Anupriya just said, the time is right. Priya said that there is no real reason to make a business case because all the brands that have adopted some of these initiatives are continuing to do very well. So should we believe that creative teams across agencies in the Indian market, in the Indian industry, are ready to understand and implement the kind of commitments that marketers will make if they become part of the Unstereotype Alliance?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. This is not a one-time thing, right? It's a collective consciousness and awareness raising initiative, right? There will be people who will be the laggards and there'll be the people who will be the leaders in this. And the faster the leaders set the examples, the faster will be the followers coming onto that bandwagon. And I think from our perspective, it's not just individual companies that will be doing it. We also need to make it a collective movement of sorts, right? And therefore, from an ASCII perspective, that's where I see our ability to bring a large number of responsible advertisers and agencies together in this conversation. Look, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. I wish this had happened 10 years earlier, right? But it's never too late to make a beginning. I think advertising's role is to go beyond just being the mirror to society. I think we can actually shape the narrative and
narrative and be normative and sort of create situations in the imagery that sort of talks about an ideal. Susan, the Unstereotype Alliance has been around for 4 years. What has your experience been in, globally as to what has been accomplished as a result? Is there any data, anything substantive that you can share about the kind of progress this has achieved?
There is data. We did some research and some evaluation a couple of years ago, and then again with some of the newer members last year. And it shows that there have been changes in the countries where Unstereotype Alliance exists. So, the number of women being portrayed in non-stereotype or unstereotype roles has increased by, I think it's 13%, which sounds small, but this is across 20 countries. So it's actually a large number. We want to keep that going. Also, there's evidence to show that women are playing more substantive roles in ads. So they have, more speaking roles, and that conversely, men being the only people speaking in ads has really declined, in fact, halved in some of these places. So I think it shows that it's catching on. And I think, as Subhash said, really, it's, this is not a one-time thing. You really have to persist, and it takes years to change some of these really deeply entrenched gender norms. And the fact that we can see some progress happening already, I think, is really good news. And we just need to keep it going and keep growing the network, because it's the numbers and the collectiveness of it that's really going to bring about the change we're looking for.
Anupriya, so there is this kind of metric that you can use to see what the Unstereotype Alliance will achieve or can achieve. How do you see that working here?
I think it works very well, and at least from our own organization level, I can share with you that we've been actively been part of the launch chapter of UA in India. And within our O group, apart from the fact that, of course, there is work being created like that, but we want to shape that more proactively in a more disciplined manner further. So we are operationalizing an action group to define clearly, and these are people from various levels in terms of what do we need to change and how to go about doing it. Because one is general awareness, which, as I said, has been there for some time in the corporations, including within our group. And there are a lot of areas that we have moved on. Like, for example, we have initiatives like, Propel Her, which is a full program on a returnee-ship, where women sort of come who've taken a pause in their careers. It's an active recruitment program. Similarly, we are an equal pay organization, and we got this externally certified. We realized that it's not something that we say ourselves. We got it externally sort of audited and certified, and we did a full campaign, a full celebration of that a few years back. So the thing is that the awareness on these areas is fairly high amongst both leadership as well as people down the line. But we believe we can do more on that. So like Susan said, these metrics, I think it's important to proactively put a plan in place to move those metrics over a period of time. And they are not going to move on their own. So I think a proactive agenda is required.
Priya, will you be able to illustrate, because you all have had hands-on experience, in the public gaze of large, iconic, multi-million-dollar brands making these changes and shifts in their advertising communication. You want to take us through or walk us through one illustration and how you managed to make that change, and whether it was difficult or what, actually not whether it was difficult, what were some of the questions that get asked and need to be answered in that process?
So, Anuradha, I think the fact is, and I think Subhash said it, it's not a one-off thing that you do, right? It's something that you need to do repeatedly, continuously. And, there are many examples, but maybe let me take the example of Dove, which in the world of beauty has created, globally across countries, country after country, the whole idea of real beauty and allowing women to feel positive, to feel confident in themselves, and really allowing beauty to be a source of confidence.
Yeah, but Priya, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in for a split second to say that Dove was perhaps the one brand in your portfolio that was already the most receptive, isn't it, in terms of what it stood for and its iconic communication. Will you take another one and walk us through it?
I could do that. Let's take Brook Bond then.
Okay.
And again, I can do this brand after brand, and you will say to me that, oh, but that brand, but we've been on this journey, and I think that's what I can demonstrate. So let's take Brook Bond and the work that was done a year ago on, including the transgender community into the community, and really that they are a part of the community. And I think, it's another way to unstereotype. So really, you can take brand after brand, and you will realize I will be naming many of the most successful brands in the country. Is the journey difficult? It is absolutely difficult, because, you have to find a linkage between the product idea and the story that you're telling. And I think that's the craft, and that's the work that the creative teams are doing. And a part of this is actually having the right diverse teams, Anuradha. I think for me, it is not just the advertising, but it's the people who create the advertising actually being diverse, inclusive, and we find that makes a huge difference as well.
What I'm curious about is when, down the line, when the teams who execute these decisions, when they are dealing with market share pressures, they're dealing today, let's say, with an environment where consumer demand is so dampened. They're talking about a time where people's sentiment, public sentiment is deeply affected. How do these goals, these commitments, how do those get impacted, and how do you ensure that those commitments feel urgent enough at a time where other things have come to play, where market share concerns are a problem, revenues are a problem?
So Anuradha, absolutely, I think all the pressures on the teams are real, but I think it comes from the starting point that this is what really consumers and women are looking for. So let me give you the example of a most bottom of the pyramid brand, Wheel. And if you think of what the work that we've done on Wheel recently, where we have talked about this idea of Ghar Se Career, or careers at home. In today's environment, with the pandemic, with the economic pressures, with all the challenges that people are going through, this is absolutely still relevant, and it does solve your market share pressures and everything else if you're actually connecting with consumers. And I think at the fundamental level, we must ask ourselves, that actually consumers have moved there, Anuradha. And therefore, you are actually doing real revenue building when you do much of this work.
Right. Subhash, will the ASCII code that exists, will it need to sort of expand to include the Unstereotype Alliance's goals, or do you think the code as is can factor in the commitments that you all will make as, as a member of the alliance?
Well, I think that's a very good question. The current ASCII code is fairly encompassing, if I may put it that way, already. However, I do believe that specific guidelines need to be thought of on this specific topic. We are actually actively considering that. We are thinking on that. We've been in touch with how the ASA in UK is doing it. They've done it fairly well. We are adapting and thinking about what is relevant for India. We've also launched one of our biggest projects this year. And that's where I think ASCII's objectives and UA's objectives kind of came together very, very well, because one of our biggest projects at ASCII is something called Gender Next, which we've just launched. It's a massive all India research amongst women, amongst influencers, amongst marketeers, amongst creative directors, amongst consumers, to not just look at the narratives or how women were portrayed in advertising in the past, but where are the emerging themes? So we want actionable insights coming out of this research that marketeers can use, because we believe that one of our roles, apart from policing the narrative, is also to guide the narrative.
Sure. Susan, you all just had the Global Member Summit. You want to tell us what the COVID challenges, the very real challenges that this experience has had and its impact on women, substantive impact. More women are out of employment. More women are economically disadvantaged as a result of this experience. How does that influence the what the Unstereotype Alliance hopes to achieve?
Well, I actually think that the Unstereotype Alliance is going to be even more important because of exactly as you said, that, women have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. More women have lost their jobs, less women have regained their jobs. And now in India, of course, we've had the second wave. Also, more women have experienced violence as they've been, faced with being locked into their family situations under lockdowns. So we know that actually diversity in firms, both in leadership and also in the decision making, really improves, again, the bottom line. It's got a measurable impact on profit. And so I think being able to have more women in decision-making in firms, looking at creating campaigns that are more inclusive, is going to gradually build back better. And this is actually what one of the key messages was in this global meeting with our executive director.
Priya, do you think men and how they are projected needs to be looked at?
Absolutely. I guess it's all genders, right, Anuradha? I think, on a lighter note, I think the pandemic has taught us all the value of hard household work. So hopefully, that's something we reflect even in advertising. And, the fact is that, I think we've got that's exactly what the stereotypes are about. And the stereotypes shouldn't be about and it's unfair to say that it's only women who are going to translate all of these in advertising or be radical. I think having a radical mindset is gender independent, and really ensuring that this translates into work is gender independent. So just to be fair to all our genders and be fair to everybody, I think what's more important is for everybody to be leaders and advocates of equity. And I think that really is the challenge, that leaders become advocates of equity and create that level playing field for everybody, right, Anuradha? I think that's really the challenge. We can't have a society where certain sections are playing from bias. And therefore, the role of men is absolutely critical. I mean, we are seeing this. And just to give you an example, our senior leadership's gone through a 3-month intensive program to unstereotype themselves and really remove all those unconscious biases that exist and really become more inclusive. And we're working with a lot of expertise organizations to really ensure all our leaders go through this. And this is also reflective, absolutely, Anuradha, of advertising and the way we depict men and women in advertising. And I think it's really about that level playing field, like I said.
Right. Subhash, do you think we may see men being objectified for some time as we, embark on this path of equity? Do you think that a reverse objectification may happen, and do you think we'll be able to stomach it? Or should we not go down that path at all? Should we ensure that men don't have to deal with what women have dealt through for generations?
Yeah, but I think, there's some amount of male objectifying happening anyway, thanks to the Hindi film industry, where certain heroes will tear off their shirts in every film, and there'll be enough whistling going on. I think, as Priya said, it's gender neutral in that sense, this whole objectifying thing.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying I'm excited for the creative industry is because gone are the times when you just tried to mirror the stereotype because you wanted to belong to the category, and that's what people felt that was the real thing, right?
Yeah,
I think today you genuinely have a chance to go beyond mirroring the stereotype into pushing newer narratives. And if there are clients such as Priya and other people in the marketing business who are also recognizing the need for it, I think it's a great opportunity for the creative industry in the next few years, where you can actually create newer themes and newer arguments, both for men and for women.
And I think consumers will have to really weigh in and let their voices be heard, in terms of the appreciation. Now you can, always express what you feel about what you see, about the brands and how they behave. So I think consumers will have to be heard. Susan, I'm going to have to give you the last word. What are your expectations from the India chapter? Because you have all your stakeholders here and all those billions of dollars or rupees going to be at your disposal to communicate exactly what this world and this country definitely needs, isn't it? So I'm going to give you the closing words. What are your expectations from these people?
Well, of course, I expect so much. It's such an incredible group of people already. And I think in India, there's just so much capacity and ability to grow the network and really make an impact globally. India has the second largest population in the world. It's got an incredible economy. It's got, this digital innovation. It's just got so much. So I think we all expect a lot from India, not just myself in the country office, but globally. India is seen as really a fundamental partner, and we're just so pleased to be working with you. And we really look forward to seeing how it grows over time and how these norms can change, and seeing India then showcase that to the rest of the world.
Absolutely, Susan. Any change that India can have and make will have a big impact on the rest of the world. Thank you very much for joining us. Anupriya, Priya, Susan, Subhash, I wish you all and this initiative a great deal of good luck. We'll be happy to support it here at CNBC TV 18. And thank you very much for watching. Look out for another conversation on the Media Dialogues on CNBC TV 18.